In the suburban town of Springfield, Illinois, there lived a boy named Jacob Turner. Jacob was quiet, reserved, and often doubted himself. From an early age, he carried a shadow of comparison wherever he went, because his childhood friend, Michael Reed, always seemed to be better. In school, Michael was the top athlete, the class leader, and the one teachers praised. Jacob, meanwhile, sat in the back of classrooms, scribbling notes, rarely raising his hand. He had ideas, sometimes even brilliant ones, but he never voiced them. Why? Because deep inside, he believed no one would take him seriously. At basketball tryouts, Jacob shot clumsily, missing the hoop. The kids laughed. Michael patted him on the back and said, "Don't worry, Jake, the sport isn't for everyone." Michael meant no harm, but to Jacob, those words echoed as confirmation of his weakness. When the debate club met, Jacob drafted speeches but never delivered them. He would hand his notes to classmates who spoke confidently on stage while he clapped quietly in the audience. The world never saw what Jacob carried inside, because Jacob never gave himself the chance. One summer, when Jacob was 15, their school organized a science fair. Michael partnered with another student, building a flashy robotic arm. Jacob worked alone on a project about renewable energy. His model was simple, not perfect, but it worked. On presentation day, Jacob hesitated. His hands trembled, his throat tightened, and when the judges came around, he stumbled through explanations. His model failed halfway through. Michael's project, meanwhile, dazzled the judges, earning first prize. That evening, Jacob sat in his room, staring at the ceiling. He thought, maybe I'm just not meant for success. Maybe some people are born to lead and others are meant to follow. It was the first time he admitted defeat to himself. Life, however, has its own timing. Jacob's grandfather, Thomas Turner, was a retired carpenter who lived a few blocks away. He noticed Jacob's quiet sadness and asked him to visit. "Jacob," his grandfather said gently, "why do you always look at the ground when you walk? A Turner should look ahead, not down." Jacob shrugged. "Because there's nothing in me to look up for, Grandpa. Michael is good at everything. I can't match him." Thomas chuckled. "Ah, so you've already lost before you've even played. Do you know what self-confidence is?" Jacob shook his head. "It's not believing you're better than others," his grandfather said. "It's believing you have the right to try, to speak, to fail, and to rise again. Confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up as yourself. You've been hiding, Jacob. Stop hiding." Those words struck deep. Encouraged by his grandfather, Jacob made a decision. At the start of junior year, he signed up for the public speaking contest. His friends laughed. "Jacob, on stage? He can't even answer roll call loudly." Even Michael was surprised. "Are you sure, Jake? Maybe start small." But Jacob shook his head. For the first time, he felt he had to prove something, not to others, but to himself. He practiced for weeks in front of the mirror, his voice cracking at times. He stumbled, restarted, and almost gave up. But every time doubt crept in, he remembered his grandfather's words. Confidence means showing up as yourself. The contest day arrived. Jacob's palms were sweaty as he climbed the stage. The lights blinded him. His notes trembled in his hand. The first few sentences came out awkward. Some kids giggled. Then he paused, took a deep breath, looked straight into the crowd, and he spoke. Not reading, not copying, but from his heart. When he finished, the applause wasn't thunderous, but it was genuine. He didn't win first place, but he didn't walk off ashamed. For Jacob, that moment was a private victory. He had shown up. That small step triggered something. Jacob started volunteering answers in class. He raised his hand, even if unsure. He tried sports again, not to win, but to play. Slowly, people noticed the change. His teachers encouraged him. His classmates stopped overlooking him. Even Michael, once the star, began to admire Jacob's persistence. One afternoon, the school principal approached Jacob with a challenge. "We're organizing a charity drive. We need someone responsible to coordinate. Will you lead?" Jacob froze. The old him would have declined immediately, but now he smiled nervously and said, "Yes, I'll try." The event wasn't flawless. He made mistakes in scheduling and miscalculated supplies, but he adapted, asked for help, and finished the drive successfully. For the first time, Jacob's name was announced on the school stage as a leader. High school ended. Jacob and Michael went to different colleges. Michael continued shining, sports captain, popular among peers. Jacob pursued engineering, still quieter than most, but far more confident than before. During his second year, disaster struck. A fire broke out in one of the campus dorms late at night. Students panicked, rushing out in chaos. Jacob, who had been nearby, noticed two freshmen trapped on the second floor. People screamed, but no one moved forward. For a moment, Jacob felt fear grip him. His old self whispered, "You can't do this, stay back." But then another voice, his grandfather's voice, echoed. Confidence isn't about being fearless. It's about believing you can act even with fear. Jacob rushed inside, guided the boys through smoke, and helped them escape. His hands burned slightly, but he didn't stop until they were safe. The next day, newspapers called him a hero. But Jacob shook his head when asked how he found the courage. He said simply, "I didn't believe I was stronger than anyone. I just believed I couldn't stay still." From that day, Jacob's life changed. He became known not as Michael's shadow, but as Jacob Turner, the young man with quiet strength. He later built a career as an engineer, designing renewable energy systems. At conferences, he no longer sat silently. He presented ideas boldly, sometimes facing criticism, but never retreating. His confidence wasn't loud or arrogant. It was calm, steady, and unshakable. People began to respect Jacob not just for his ideas, but for the quiet certainty with which he carried himself. He no longer compared his journey to Michael's. Instead, he built his own path, brick by brick, choice by choice. Years later, when Jacob returned to Springfield, Illinois as a successful professional, he visited his grandfather's grave. Placing flowers, he whispered, "Thank you for teaching me not to hide. Thank you for giving me the courage to try." He stood there for a long time, realizing that his entire life had changed the day he decided to stop shrinking back. He had learned that failure wasn't the end. It was just part of the climb. And confidence, he now knew, wasn't about never falling. It was about trusting yourself enough to stand up every time you did. The story of Jacob shows us the power of self-confidence. Confidence does not mean you are the smartest, the strongest, or the most talented. It means you trust yourself enough to show up, to speak, to act, and to keep moving despite fear. Without self-confidence, talent hides, ideas die, and opportunities vanish. With it, even an ordinary person can do extraordinary things. Jacob wasn't born special. He wasn't the brightest or the strongest, but the moment he chose to believe in himself, the world began to believe in him too. When you doubt yourself, remember Jacob's journey. Remember that confidence is not built overnight. It grows every time you choose to act instead of hide. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. True power lies in self-confidence, because when you believe in yourself, you unlock the courage to change your life.
If you find wisdom in this story, subscribe the channel and also like, comment, and share the video.